Live, we're going to do the equipment demonstration, and for everybody who's here, I figured we could just start at one end, work our way all the way through, show you a couple of these ones, maybe show you how to do a squat to deadlift if you guys want to learn that properly, just to make sure, and anything else you want to learn, just let me know in terms of movements or exercises, and if you have any questions at all at any point, just ask. Cool. Okay, so we'll start over here. This is our abdominal back extension machine. Basically, it is having you do crunches and then also low back extensions. So the first one works your core, the second one works your low back. All you're going to do with this one is you have a little harness here. So you'll notice with a lot of these machines, there are kind of two different settings. So this one, when it's set to the back, this is where you're going to do your crunches. And then if you do your low back extensions, you'd set it down here so you're pushing backwards. I'll show you the crunches first. So this one, wherever you feel comfortable putting your feet, whatever works for you. I like to go, I think, in here. Go down here. Not too crazy on the weight. All you're going to do, try and scoot your butt right to the back. Try to hold these nice and tight to your upper body so you're not kind of getting slack on them. And then from there, you're basically just crunching down, come back. Big one with this is make sure you're not thinking you're just trying to kind of go forward. That's going to use a lot more hip flexor. You want to think you're trying to sort of drive your ribs into your hips. So you're crunching down versus coming forward like this. Because right here, my abs are basically relaxed. It's more my hip flexors kicking in. Whereas straight down, I'm feeling them actually crunch quite a bit. And then for your low back extension, whatever your mobility is or flexibility here, you can set it to 2, which doesn't quite get you leaning as far forward, or down to 1. You just want to make sure your back's staying, I want to say straight, so flat versus rounding to get you down there. And then from there, same idea, you're just pushing back. But you want to make sure when you push back too that you're not releasing your abdominals, so you're like hyper extending your back. You just want to keep them tensed up. Go back as far as you can, keeping them tensed up. And these ones both, most likely you're going to want to do kind of like a higher rep range to get them work. You're not going to want to do like super heavy for 3 to 5 reps type thing. It's a little, just more for keeping your core tensed up. With the majority of these machines, obviously you just pull the pin out, choose the weight you want to use. All of them have a little 5-pound clip here. Some look like this, where when you push it in, it just adds 5 pounds. You take it out, the 5 pounds is off. There's other ones, just a couple of the other machines, that you push it down to add and up to take it off. It depends which one, just because there's a couple different styles. That's kind of it for that one. Any questions on that? That's good. Okay. On to the next one. This is our twist machine. So this one, be sitting nice and upright. Get your arms around the pads as best you can, holding on to the handles. One big trick to this one is make sure you're squeezing this pad with your knees. Main reason is, if not, a lot of time you'll see people almost like pushing with their legs once it's set, versus really using your core to do the work. And the other point is, for this one especially, because we're seated and everything's kind of locked in, because we're just trying to isolate. So for this one, what we do, there's a little handle right here. So just set it at the start, you're going to pull that up, go as far as you can to one side, again as long as you can still keep the core tensed up while doing that. And then squeezing your knees a little bit, sitting fairly upright, tense up your core, and then twist. So right now, obviously it's going to work the majority of my muscles. Ideally working on obliques on the right hand side. So twist in that way. You want to make sure when you're getting back that you're not letting the weight rest. And then grabbing it again, I kind of see that a lot. You want to keep the tension on so your core is always activated there. And once you're done, whatever number you're doing on that one, pull up that little tab, all the way to the other side, and then you're working more your left side. The only problem I see some people have with this one is if they're not quite as tall as me or long limb. Sometimes the arms don't really reach around that well. I have a couple clients who are like just struggling to get there. You can sort of just hold it here if you need to. You can wrap your hands around here I get a lot of people who think they want to sort of lean back into this chair too. You don't really want to do that. You want to be a little bit upright, just enough that you're keeping your core tensed up, just thinking good posture, right? You don't want to be kind of slouched down. You don't want to be too far this way because you'll actually feel your back doing the work. So just core tense, twisting side to side. And again, this is one of the ones where you just push that down to at 5 versus pulling it in and out. Okay, this one is your side belt raise. Those ones don't have it. This is the first one we get to with the seat adjustment. So basically, the nice thing about these machines is literally everything that's adjustable is orange, yellow, whatever that color is. So this one, depending on how tall you are, move it up and down. I'm usually somewhere around here because I'm all legs and not much torso. So this one, you're going to sit facing in. You have little handles here. The handles are just to kind of relax your hands on. You're not trying to grip it and pull with it. Your ideal here, again, sit nice and upright. This is for your shoulders. From there, just try to push your elbows up and then back down. You want to make sure that your traps aren't, so your traps, the muscles up at the top and back there. You want to make sure you're not hunching up to do it like this. You want to try and keep those relaxed. What I usually tell people is think you're actually trying to push your elbows out versus up. Because I find that gets your shoulder muscles, your delts working a bit better. Versus a lot of times when people think up, they're sort of hunching up like this, which we don't really want. Your traps are naturally going to work on that one anyway, but when you're really trying to isolate your shoulder muscles, you want to try and keep them depressed versus coming up like this. And that's actually one of the big reasons you see a lot of, I'll say a lot of weakness in people's shoulders is their traps do a lot of the work. So even when we're lifting things, you know, instead of somebody lifting like this, it's often like that, which just keeps these weak. So then that's where you get a lot of people getting injuries in their shoulders because when they finally try and lift some weight with their shoulder, you can't take that, and often you rotate your hips getting issues. All right. This one is our bicep curl tricep extension. So basically it's a machine creature curl, more or less, for your biceps. And then you can set it to your triceps for tricep extension as well. Same thing with the adjustments. Pull the pin out, choose what you want to use. This one, you want to make sure your seat height is somewhere at the point, so I'll show you where it would be wrong. So if I'm sitting way down here, very hard for me to get the back of my arm on this pad, right? See how I'm kind of really hunched up, but not really. This obviously doesn't look like good posture. So you want to have somewhere where you can keep your back straight, back of your arm nice and flat to this pad the whole time. And then you're just going to be curling up, so you're holding on here. And again, you grip wherever's comfortable. Curling up. You want to make sure that when you curl it up, your elbows aren't lifting off, so you're not doing this. You're trying to keep those elbows in the back of your arm plastered to that pad. So you're just working your biceps. Then triceps, you're just going to take it again, adjust it back. There's 2 spots to adjust it to, again, depending on flexibility and mobility of your elbow. This one, I see a lot of people grip it this way, which is fine. You can kind of hold it however, whichever way you want, you can mix it up. Same thing though, you're trying to keep your arms pushed against that pad. This one is a little awkward to start because it's such a deep bend in my elbow. And you'll see a lot of people when they go to push, their arms kind of come up like this. It just takes a couple kind of times playing around with it to really keep your elbows flat down and think that you're actually, don't think you're pushing out, think you're trying to push it back in towards your knees. And get that big bend out of it. And again, you can hold it there, you can hold it here. One little, call it like a pro tip, watch your knees when you're coming down. I put myself punched on, I have long legs, but still. So I usually kind of that here just in case. And that one's for the back of your arms. I have found for some people it's easier to get the form down on the tricep one. If you do actually sort of take it, push it down, get your arms on, and then let it bend. Just a little more natural for someone to try and get that movement, where from here, again, it is sometimes a little awkward to keep the elbows pushed against the mat. Oh, and also, I guess I can't really put the seat up too high for me. But some people, if the seat's up too high, you'll find you're almost too far over, and then the top part of your arm isn't against that pad, so you just want to find that kind of sweet spot where your shoulders aren't pulled forward, they're kind of back down, back's nice and straight, and everything's staying nice and still. Seated row, we have a few different options for this in the gym. We have one over here, I'll show you another one over there. I like this one because it actually gives you a bit of a chest pad, so you know you're not going to end up sort of cheating it by leaning back and pulling. So this one, again, depending on how long your arms are, you just pull this adjustment out. I mean, that's a little far for me, but you do want to get it to the point where when you're letting your arms go back out, you're still getting a stretch. So sometimes have it about maybe an inch or two too far, and then just kind of reach forward a bit, just so when you're at that extended point, you're not here, because again, you want to keep that tension on. So for me, it's like a few notches. And then same with this seat adjustment. You want to make sure that basically when you're grabbing on, your arms are about parallel to the floor. So if you put it down a notch. That'll probably be about right for me. And again, any grip you like. You can see people doing some weird underhand stuff and overhand. Just grabbing on. You want to make sure when you're doing this, you're not letting your shoulders pull forward so far that there's no tension in there. Your furthest point is going to be right here versus here. And then you're just pulling back, trying to squeeze your shoulder blades together. A lot of time what you'll see, good way to describe this, you'll see someone really working their lats more than the mid-back, which will be if I'm pulling like this. So you can see how like the middle of my back isn't really doing anything. The shoulder blades aren't coming together. I'm almost using more bicep and a little bit of my lats down here than anything. Where you really want to try to get that squeeze between the shoulder blades. Just work the mid-back. Like that. And you'll just see that a lot with a lot of bent over rows or any kind of back exercise. Just because, not that we're trying to make it easier, but it's easier if we're not squeezing those shoulder blades together. The other trick is just when you are squeezing the shoulder blades together, make sure you're not relaxing your core and like really arching back to do it. You want to keep your core tight and get that squeeze. This one is our chest fly and rear delt fly. So I'll show you chest flies first. So this one has kind of a weird adjustment up top here. So for your chest flies, there's anywhere from number 1 to number 5, depending on, again, your flexibility. So I mean, if I'm not very flexible, if my shoulders can't go back very far, I can just go from here. But you do want to try and get a good stretch out of this one. So if I'm really flexible, I can take it back. 1, which this might even be a little far for me, we'll see. And then you're getting just a bigger stretch, right? Again, you can even adjust that after every set if we're going to do a few sets, because you'll kind of loosen off a little bit as you do it. But this one's for your chest. So you want to make sure, number 1, that your elbows aren't flailing down like this or flaring down like that, because that's a lot of weight on your rotator cuff. So just try and keep them about even. Should feel the tension in your chest muscles versus up in your shoulders. If you do feel it in your shoulders, chances are you're sort of coming back like this versus keeping that elbow up, which is going to work your chest. And that can do, if you have a significant weight on there, that can do some damage to your rotator cuffs because they're not meant to twist back like that very far. But again, this one, seat height should be having this come in just about the same height as your chest, mid-chest, maybe a little lower depending on what you're trying to work. Get a nice stretch out. And in, one thing I do like to tell people is when you bring it in, actually try and push them against each other a little bit. Just gets you that extra little contraction in your chest where you're not relaxing here, where you're actually getting that good little extra squeeze. And for your rear delts, which are the back of your shoulders back here, this is actually a really good postural exercise. We actually use this a lot with clients who sit at desks all the time. They kind of roll forward a little bit like this. So people walking around, whether they're big muscular guys who just do chest all the time, or someone who works at an office or drives a lot. everything we do in life is typically in front of us, right? There's not much on a general day where we're doing this unless we're like hugging a friend or something. So everything's here, right? Your computer's here, you're driving, everything you're moving around is always in front. So often your pecs will get a little tight and your back muscles will loosen off so you're overstretched. So this one's a great one because it works your rear delts, your traps, a little bit of everything just to try and open you up a little bit. Now I like to do this one, just my hands overhand on top of these handles. Again, trying to sit nice and upright. You don't want to be leaning back. You also don't want to be forward too much. So just good upright position. Again, same as the seated row, making sure your shoulders aren't pulled forward, that they're kind of back in place, and then all you're doing is pushing out and coming back. Just like that. And again, that you should feel sort of right up and behind your shoulder. You'll feel it across the middle of your back too, but more so on the outside of your shoulder there on the back, or the back of your shoulder, sorry, the rear delt. That one's a great one for posture, just to open up. I have had clients do it too if they have the mobility in their chest, because sometimes chest is just too tight, where you can actually hold here, but having to make sure the elbows stay up versus dropping down for the same reason as the rotator cuff, and coming back like this. And that's a really good one because you get a bit of a stretch here to strengthen those muscles more, upper back. This machine is the only one with 3 different settings. So this one is a chest press, an incline chest press, and a shoulder press, depending how you set it up. Now the only real things you have to set up is where the seat is. So it's all the way forward. I know it doesn't look flat because this is on an angle. This would be a flat chest press. If you bring it in one, it'll be your incline chest press, and then in one more, it'll be your shoulder press. The other thing you have to watch with that, actually it's set up to show you that right now, is you can adjust where the starting point is for the handles. So if I was doing a shoulder press, and this was set that low, you'd probably figure this out pretty quick, that's not really going to work for me to try and get down that low. My shoulders are just going to be coming out of their joints and everything. So you just have to make sure you're adjusting it to your proper setting, wherever that is. So again, for a shoulder press here, for me, would be about right. I'm just pushing up. With a shoulder press, whether it's dumbbell, machine, barbell, whatever it might be, you want to make sure that when you're pushing up, you're actually trying to squeeze your shoulders. So what I usually tell people is try and kind of pull your bicep towards your ear versus just pushing up. You want to try and feel that muscle work. If you don't have the mobility to get back like this, which again, often kind of office workers, people drive a lot, chest is tight, you can grab it here, works your shoulders, very similar. You'll work a bit more of your front delt, which is the front of your shoulder, versus your medial, but for the purpose of most people going to the gym who just want to work their shoulders a bit, not a big deal. You know, if you're like a bodybuilder, physique competitor, then it's going to be different, but if we're just here to work out and get our muscles moving, it's going to be fine. So you can just hold here, and again, pushing up, again, still trying to pull that bicep towards your ear so you get a good squeeze right here. You want to make sure as well that when you're coming down, that at the bottom, you're not getting a little kind of droop of the shoulders dropping up and down. It should be just tensed up here, push, and down, keeping that tension on your delts versus everything kind of dropping. You kind of see that happening sometimes, where it's just your traps are kind of letting go and coming back up. If we're trying to just target those shoulders, you just want to push up and down and keep everything kind of locked in place. Your incline chest press, which is the next one down. We'll probably start this one more, maybe. So this one's for your upper chest. Pec minor, I guess is what you call it. So kind of up here versus the main part of your chest. That actually might be one more for me. Here. Shoulders back, chest out. Again, keeping your core tensed up, so you don't want to be really arched like this. You actually see that a lot with people trying to do an incline chest press, whether it's dumbbell, barbell. where they're so arched that basically if I arch my back enough, this pretty much just turns into a flat chest press. Like I'm just pushing up almost like I would with my back that arched, versus we want to be tensed up a little bit, pushing up, because that's what's actually going to get my upper pecs, versus as soon as I kick out this far, I'm basically just cheating my body into thinking I'm on an incline, but I'm really just flattening this out. That one, just be careful. That is the muscle that, like I was talking about, when people are really tight in the chest from, again, a lot of office workers and people who drive a lot, that kind of thing. That's the muscle that's going to be very tight on most. So even if you have to start one notch higher, just to make sure you're not pulling that out of the wrong place, you could start there, and then as you go, if you feel like you can get a little lower and get a bit more of a stretch there, you can. Then, take that to a regular flat chest press. Again, always want to have your core just tensed up a little bit in any exercise you do. And here, shoulders back and down, and then we're just pushing up. And again, same thing when you're coming down, you don't want to let those shoulders, well, I can't really do it because I don't have a set low enough, but shoulders kind of drop in and out. Sometimes you'll see people too when they push up, almost like they're trying to get an extra push at the top like this, where now my shoulders are just kind of pushing forward, my chest isn't doing that. That's really just me trying to push out. You want to make sure you're not doing that. The goal is to flex your chest muscles versus push this up as high as you can. So my stopping point when I'm pushing would be here versus there. This is just throwing my shoulders forward and not really working any extra muscle, but just putting my shoulder joint in not the best situation to keep it strong, especially at a heavier. At a lightweight, it's not really going to bother anything, but at a heavier weight, you can do some damage. Like if you got a ton of weight on there and all of a sudden everything throws forward a bit, you're stretching some stuff back here and it won't feel too great. Any questions on that one? That's probably the oddest one in terms of adjusting things, because there's like 3 here, 3 there. This one is 2 exercises. So we have another seated row here. This one just doesn't have the chest pad. So we'll start with that. So for this one, it actually has a little pad for your feet. You can put your feet on just so you can keep yourself nice and tensed up. Your handles here. And again, same idea where you don't want your shoulders kind of pulling too far forward. You don't want to be hunched over like this. Just keeping your posture nice and upright. Pulling back, squeezing the shoulder blades together. Like that. What I'll often have people do is just scooch far enough forward that their knees are pushing against this pad a little bit. And again, trying to make sure you're not, and again, you see it, I don't want to sound bad, but typically younger guys who want to look stronger than maybe they are, I've done it when I was younger, it happens, where they're kind of doing this. There's a lot going on there. Especially if your goal is just to work your back muscles, try and keep your body nice and still. Again, you can play around with angles. You can be a little bit more forward squeezing, you can be a little bit more back squeezing, but you don't want this movement going on too much. Then it's also a lat pull down, so just have an eye on this. Sometimes this will be up here. If all of a sudden you try and go to a lat pull down and you've forgotten to take it down, you're basically just trying to go pull up. So let's bring that down. Again, this you can go, the wider you go, the more you're going to target your lats. The closer in you go, the more you're going to target your biceps. So I usually have people grab pretty much right past where the bar angles. Like if you kind of put your thumbs in that indentation, that's usually pretty good for most. And then you just sit down. This one, you want to have your knees under the pad here, just to hold it down in case the weight's really, really heavy. And here, pulling down and back, getting a nice stretch. One thing I see a lot of people doing a little different here is just the mindset about it is you're thinking you're trying to pull that bar to your chest. So sometimes you'll see people sort of curving over like this to get it down there. You always want to keep your back kind of chest nice up and out, good posture. The trick for this one I tell people is focus on pulling your elbows down and back versus the bar to you. So your goal is your elbows are coming down back, getting a good squeeze, and back up. Versus kind of getting this, or you'll see some people try to pull it down from your stomach almost. You're just trying to pull the elbows down and back. Should end up at about your chest. And you're trying to get a squeeze right in here. Should feel like it's pretty much just in behind and underneath your arm because your lats are right here. So should be getting squeezed. Thanks, Owen. This one is your adduction abduction machine. So this one works basically inner thighs, your adductors, and your abductors, which are pretty much outer leg, glute more than anything. So this one has a few different adjustments too. We'll do your adductors first. So this would be where I'm basically squeezing my legs together. This one, your adjustment's right here. So this one you actually have to set at the right spot to start it. So you're gonna pull this up, go as wide as you can. I'm not very flexible there, so for me, pretty much there. Now what I'll usually do, just because I want to get a good stretch out of it when I'm doing it, is I'll sort of pop myself up a bit and go to that next level. Because I can sit here comfortably doing this, it's just to get it out there is a little challenging. Set your weight, and then you're just trying to squeeze your knees together, get a good squeeze in the middle, back out. Just make sure you're not letting this one come out too fast, especially if you set it a little far. Groin muscles, adductors, not good. And then just a good squeeze. And again, trying not to let the weights rest every time you get out there. You want to kind of stop just before that. This one's nice because you can see it in front of you. And you're kind of stopping right there. Then, you can also do your abduction, which is going to work your glutes mostly. All you do is flip your legs over, turn the pads around. Sitting nice and upright. I actually, I don't know why, I just feel it better. I like to lean forward a little bit, still keeping my back straight, but just lean forward a bit. And then you're just trying to push your knees out. And you should feel that kind of top corner of your butt cheeks right there. You'll feel it out along the sides of your legs a bit too, but the goal is to feel the butt cheeks working on that one. This one's a great warm-up if you are going to go do some squats or lunges or deadlifts or anything like that, just to get your glutes firing off a bit first, so it'll help you. And for stability purposes, it's not bad to do some of the adduction too, just because it gets those warmed up so you can feel everything, just the blood flow, and you can feel those muscles working, so you're trying to stabilize everything pretty darn well. This one's pretty straightforward, actually, not much adjustment here. The only adjustment would be your back rest. So I have long legs, so usually I can pretty far back to start. So just a leg press, getting your feet nice and flat on here. So one thing, I actually did a video about this a couple months ago, I want to say, where you see some people's low back start flexing under here just with mobility issues. So your goal is your back's nice and flat against here, butt down, and then you're just pushing. And you're just coming back to the point where everything back here is staying nice and still. What you'll sometimes see, which is where people are trying to get, they have good intentions where they're trying to get really good mobility out of it, but what will happen, be easy to show for me because I have long legs, and lighten it up just so I don't hurt myself. You'll have someone in here, cat, if you want to just watch this part, and if you guys want to see that too, feel free to just come around. What'll happen is as my legs come back, my butt kind of right here will actually sort of curl under like that. So I mean, yeah, I'm getting back really far, but as soon as I start to come off that back pad versus keeping nice and against it, right? So good versus, and I mean, my back actually just cracked doing that, so that tells you something. The idea is as soon as your butt starts to curl off there, you're just putting tension on your spine, which you really don't want. It's just a mobility thing, right? If we're trying to work our glutes and our quads, then our goal should be to keep that still so they have to give you that stretch. Versus as soon as that starts to curl off, you're not getting a stretch out of your glutes or quads anymore. You're just getting your spine in a bad spot where it's taking on some of that weight, which we don't want. So that's one just to watch. You see it more on the plate loaded one just because of how it's set up. But it can happen here too. This one's a little tougher because when you're getting in, you typically have to set it at the right height to be able to get your legs in. But just trying to keep that nice and still. The only other thing with the leg press, and this goes for squats and deadlifts and everything too, is just the angle your feet, knees, and ankles are on. You want to make sure that your knees are never popping in like this. If you're doing this, can you see that? Mm-hmm. Right, so, I mean, you guys can probably tell that doesn't look overly great. But you do see it a lot, especially as people go heavier, they'll kind of go to push and it'll be like that. So it's maybe not as pronounced as what I'm, no one's really sitting here like this, doing this. Odd. But you will see people when it starts to get heavier, they get tired where they go to push and the knees kind of pop in a bit and then come out. All that is basically, first off, your glutes aren't doing any work once your knees are popping in like that. And if your goal is to work your glutes, you actually want to have your knees, now don't like awkwardly out like this, but just a little external rotation, which just means pushing your knees out a bit. And that's going to work your glutes more. Straight on is going to be quads and glutes in there, but you just don't want to let them pop in because you can see just the pressure that would put on my knee as well. Wouldn't be ideal. I mean, that's how you get like a collateral ligament damage and whatnot. And it can go the other way. It's just a lot less common that someone's knee would pop too far out this way, unless they're like hypermobile. But you'll see that that's, I mean, a common injury. Like you hear runner's knee and that kind of thing a lot. And often that's just glute inactivity. And then that knee starts to come in when they're running or when they're not so much cycling, but any exercise where that knee starts to pop in just puts a lot of pressure. Like, there's not much weight on here, so I'm not going to do any damage to myself, but you can see how this may not look great. I mean, the angle is crazy versus here. Basically, you want hip, knee, and ankle in a nice line, and that easily can be detailed by what angle your foot's on. So if my feet are straight, everything should be nice and straight like my feet. If I angle out a bit, which is completely fine, you're going to work a bit more glute there, then you want your quad to be on the same line as well. You'll often see people who are like, okay, my knee was popping in, well, I'll angle my feet out, but then their knees still stay doing this, but they think they've made the adjustment, even though, just because they angled their feet out, but that doesn't necessarily mean your knees aren't coming in, it just means you turned your feet out. So it's just about trying to keep basically your quad and your foot on the nice same angle. Helps a lot. And that one you'll actually see a lot with lunges. In terms of, so that's all the pre-core equipment. Selectorized stuff. Does anyone want to see, like, we have our max bench, which is kind of a different machine. I could probably show the max bench, the leg press, and then maybe some like lunges, squats, deadlifts sort of thing. Would that work, people? Yeah? Just so you feel comfortable, you can play around with some stuff. Okay, so I'll show you the max bench. It's a bench press, but it's a there's a few more pre-core. My bad. So, we have our glute extension. So this one's just a glute kickback. This one is for your butt. You'll feel a little bit of hamstring, mostly butt. This one's pretty self-explanatory. There literally are cutouts where it shows where you should put your feet for the most part. Again, depending on your hips. If your hips are wider, your feet should be wider. It's whatever naturally how you stand is where your legs should be. This one, forearms on here. You want to make sure, again, your back's nice and straight versus kind of hunched over like this. But you also don't want to be hyperextended where you're really, really kicking it up like this. And that just, all you have to do to adjust that is just tighten up your core a little bit. That should keep you nice and straight. And then put one foot on the machine, and then push it up and back. Again, keeping the core nice and tight, and you should feel your butt squeeze as you push up. You want to make sure that things aren't twisting, and you're not, the most common thing with this one is you'll see people arching their back a lot, so it'll kind of be like this, which I'm getting a lot of low back stuff going on there. That should be nice and still. And I'm just trying to squeeze my butt. And you want to have sort of your heel midfoot on the pad there. And do each side. Any questions on that one? That one's a little different, but just really making sure you're not getting low back movement or some movement. This is our lying hamstring curls. Those for your hamstrings. We have two hamstring machines really. One's a seated, one's a lying. This one just gets a lot more extension from them. So here, just lying down, you want to make sure your hips are at a point where, again, your low back isn't rounding. So sometimes if you're too far up, my back's kind of round right now. Too low. Oh yeah, too low at the round too. So basically you're just trying to get the hinge of your hips right in this spot here, where naturally you're going to be able to bend your hips. Still. So I'm going to go here. And then all I'm trying to do, curl all the way up. Nice and slow all the way down. And again, when I get to the bottom of my mobility here, I don't want to let it go so far that I turn around a bit. I want to keep everything and curling. Just like that. You should feel that in your hamstrings, back your legs. This one does have one different adjustment than all the other ones, just for how long your legs are. So that was actually set pretty short for me. But all you have to do is pull this out. If you have longer legs, you can bring it out there. Shorter legs in, anywhere in between, whatever works for you. Then, I'll put it close.
Okay, yeah, no one.
Okay, cool. So this one is your seated hamstring or quad extension machine. So again, this one just adjusting the seat height wherever you need it. Ideally with this one, there's a little silver circle right here. When you're adjusting your seat height, you want that to line up right with your knees, because that's where the rotation is on the machine, so that's where the rotation should be on your leg as well. So if you need, great. So we'll show you quad extension. So this one has 6 different settings here, so it's a little confusing for some. The first one is the bigger lever. That just adjusts whether you're doing your quads or your ankles. So right now it would be set up for hamstrings. We can show that first just because it's here. And again, that one you're just putting your legs in between, curling under, back up. Again, depending on how flexible you are, mobile you are, where you can keep your hips, just like the leg press, sitting down and in there. If I can't go up quite as high, I can start here, same, start here, depending on how much mobility. If you have really tight hamstrings, you might not be able to get up here without your butt lifting up. And then you can also adjust this bar with the smaller handle to how far out it is on your legs. Right, so you can see that makes a slight adjustment as to where it sits. Ideally, you want it right around your ankles, just above your ankles. Then you're just curling in. And again, trying to make sure everything here is staying nice and still. You're just trying to isolate your hamstrings. You can even hold yourself down if you're trying to go heavier. Then, for your quad extensions or leg extensions, you're just going to adjust this. And again, this one, depending on how much you can bend your knees, some people, maybe that's the first they can go. Closer, closer. Here, and again, same thing with the height here. This one, the height of where this sits on your leg is a bit more important because it can push out a little bit. So if I have it set really far and then I go to come up, actually it's pretty good there. But for some people, if they have shorter legs, you'll find that wherever you set it, if you start to come up, it might roll down towards your feet a bit more, which you don't really want. I'm getting some head nods like it's maybe happened before. So just find a spot, again, kind of right around the ankle where you want to be. And again, this one, keeping your butt planted, and then you're just trying to straighten your legs up all the way. Good hard squeeze at the top, and then back down. And you should feel that in your quads. Again, with this one, not that it makes a huge, but you can play around with sort of the angle your legs are on. Again, you shouldn't be popping your knees in like this. Obviously, you can tell this looks a little odd. This will work more in my outer quads. This, straightforward. This, more inner quads. which you can mess around with a little bit if there's some points you want to target a bit more, because we do have all over there. That's it for that one, I guess. Yeah. Okay, that's all the pre-car machines. Forgot about this nice roll. I'll show you the max bench. I'll show you the leg press, the plate loaded one. And then maybe we'll go to the back and just do some quick deadlift, squat, lunges just to make sure they look okay. If you want, if not, you can skip them, whatever you want to do. Bench press, I just like to show this one because it's actually a safety bench press. It's a machine, I think we're the only ones in town that have one, which is kind of nice. So bench press, just like a push-up or a chest press. Ideally keeping your core tight. That bar. Just like the machine chest press earlier, bring it down to your chest. Push up. The nice thing about ours is, first off, if you find, I mean this is about the right height, but if you find that it is almost too high for you and you're really having to like arch your back a lot, which we don't want, all you do is tap on this little tab bit down by my feet, and it can adjust you to a better height. You just want to make sure you're not lower than knees. So let's pretend I just have some obnoxious amount of weight on here. You know, I'm doing a bunch of reps, really struggling, can't get that last one up, but now I'm stuck. Happens a lot, see it all the time. There's videos of people like half dying on the bench press at home. The reason we got this machine, obviously we're a 24-hour gym, so I want to make sure I didn't come in at 5:30 in the morning and find something like this or something. If you lift your foot, push down on the pad, bring it down, it rests on here, you can scoot your way out, no problem. And then it will come up on its own again, so you don't die. I like that part. So again, it's just awesome little machine for anyone who's either trying to push out like some really heavy reps, or people are trying to just go to that point where they can't do any more, or if you're just doing bench pressing and you want to give it a try. It's great because you can't really hurt yourself. There's not going to be a point where that barbell is stuck here or up higher. And the only other thing I would say about a bench press is just when you're pushing, making sure that bar is coming down to about your sternum or chest versus up near your throat. You'll see some people kind of up too high. And that's almost working more your front delts than anything, where you want it to be down sternum, kind of nipple height when you're pushing. So it's your actual chest working, not shoulders kind of coming over to try and push it like this. Which again is very similar to when I was saying how the shoulders will kind of push forward sometimes. You want to avoid that and just work on the chest muscles.
What's the weight of that bar on
So all of our bars, all of our Olympic bars, which are these ones, are 45 pounds. The only one that would be different is like on the Smith machine, it's actually attached. I think it's like 15. Which again, if you ever want to learn a bench press, you can even wheel the bench over there. It's a little bit lighter, and you can play around with that too. A little bit easier to learn, and it keeps it in a nice, still, straight line. And that one actually has safeties. You know what? I'll show you the safeties on there real quick, just because it is a good way to learn it. So, Kat, if you want to come just over here. So this one, the nice thing, whatever exercise you're doing, you could be doing squats, lunges, chest press, bent over rows, shoulder press, whatever you can do with a barbell, more or less you can do on here. So we can do a squat just for something. So it has little latches on the side here, and little holes. So when you go to pick it up, you want to make sure you turn those back, just so it's not catching anything. So say I'm doing some squats or something like this. Say I'm stuck here and I can't get up, it's so heavy. Turn that, it'll clip in, you can get out without collapsing. And it'd be the same with like a chest press. If you have a bench there, you can kind of lock it in just so it doesn't fall on you. So that's actually a nice one to kind of learn some of those exercises too without worrying about being out in the open of the wilderness of the gym and bailing because you don't know where to go or can't keep it in there. Are there any other machines you guys want to see? Do you want to see the plate load leg press at all, or the half squats or anything? Or it's good. Maybe a quick deadlift one. I know that's the one we get a lot of questions about is deadlift. Yeah? All right, come on over. Over here, this is one of my favorite exercises, so this is perfect. Take this off. Oops. I'm just going to get a little bit of weight on here. So first off, for anyone who just wants to learn deadlifts, I would suggest starting with our bumper plates, only because they're the same diameter all the way through, whether it's a 10 pound or a 45 pound. Versus like a 10-pound metal weight is only about this big. So if you learn with these, you're always going to be getting the same depth, which is really good to learn, because sometimes if you're not going as low or you're not getting quite as high up with it, you can hurt something because you're trying to stretch almost too far because the weights are small. I'm going to put a little bit of weight on there for myself, just so I'm not putting the tens on. Always put clips on your bar when you're doing anything with a barbell. That way, if you go on some weird angle, it's not going to slide off on you. See it on bench press sometimes who doesn't have it and they struggle with one arm and then the weight slides off and then the other weight slides off and then the thing just really fun to watch. Okay, deadlift. First off, we'll put it on there. So, a few things with a deadlift. Barbell deadlift, obviously. First off, there's no real specific, like it's not the same for everyone. So if I were to say, oh, your feet should be 10 inches apart, perfectly straight, depends on the person. Depends how the bones go into your hips, depends how your hips work. Personally, I like to be out a little bit, kind of that just athletic stance. So if you were just to kind of stand comfortably, that should be where you stand for a deadlift. Unless like your comfort is like this. I don't think most people do that. Typically, feet are angled out just a little bit. Just a little external rotation, which is going to get your glutes going. Again, core nice and tight, and typically about hip width apart, if not a bit wider. So with that, you're going to get right up. So one big thing I see, I'll show you some things I see wrong first, because sometimes it's easier to pick it apart if you can see it incorrectly. So first one would be, this isn't enough weight that's going to injure me or anything. People starting with the bar way out here, and then trying to lift like this. The further out that bar is, the more work your back has to do, like your low back. So if I'm coming out like that, obviously you can see I'm darn near leaning forward just to pick that up. Puts a lot of pressure on your low back, your spine, which you don't want. Yes, a deadlift does work those muscles, but you want to make sure they're not the primary muscles getting worked. They just work because they're keeping you still. So with a deadlift, again, you're coming down. Bar nice and close. It should be pretty much right where your shoelaces are tied. And with a deadlift, that bar should be moving straight up and down in a perfect line the whole time. So from there, as much as my hips are out and back, that barbell is moving in a straight line, right? It's not going anything like that. It's not popping in and out, which you will see a lot, especially people starting out and learning it. The goal is straight line. Second off with the deadlift, don't think you're moving up and down. Think you're pushing your hips back and forward. Squats are up and down, right? Squats, we think, okay, up, down, perfect. Deadlift, you want to think your butt's going back, and then your butt's pushing forward, back, forward. Just that. Again, my back's staying nice and straight the whole time. I'm not doing this, which is really bad. Don't let that happen. Back's nice and straight. In terms of watching from the front, you want to make sure, again, that your knees aren't popping in on you. If anything, they're actually kind of coming out a bit as you're lifting up because that's your glutes engaging. So, again, pretending the barbell's there. You don't want to be like this. If anything, when you're coming up, you can actually be pushing them out a little bit. I mean, not like, don't aggressively do this or something. But just out a little bit, which is going to encourage your glutes to work. Weight in your heels. Heels mid-foot, you don't want to be, I do see that sometimes too, where at the very bottom, the heels are lifting, and it's almost pushing off your toes. Should be nice and flat-footed. Some people even suggest doing it bare feet, just because most people's shoes have a pretty darn good lift on them. So that naturally is already putting your weight forward a little bit. That's why you'll see like a weightlifting shoe is typically really flat. For deadlifts, and then a squat shoe would actually have a lift, which makes it a little easier. What else with the deadlift? You want to make sure your shoulders are back and down, tensing things up there, core's tight. So you don't want, shoulders really rounding like this. One little thing that can make a bit of a difference with your neck, you'll see a lot of people, which I get it, you want to watch yourself in the mirror, make sure your form's good. So you'll have someone like this, coming up, great. Now you can see the angle of my neck when I'm doing this, right? Like this is pretty kinked up. Your neck should actually be straight the whole time. So you should actually be tucking your chin at the bottom. So it should stay basically straight. Versus getting kind of this sort of motion where you're, okay, I see myself. And you should be squeezing the heck good of your butt cheeks. So that's deadlift. I kind of want to do lunges real quick. So, Kat, if you want to kind of go in a straight line right in front of me here, because this is what I just see often done a little bit wrong. So a lot of people when they're doing lunges, they're always trying to keep their feet in a straight line, like they're here, here. So my feet are almost one right in front of the other. Ideally, when you're doing a lunge, if your hips are here and your natural stance is here, your lunges should be that far apart as well. So you should be here, here, there. Again, nice straight line, right? My quad down here, my ankle is all nice and straight. Same with my foot. I correct a lot of people on that one. And then again, that one, even more common than leg press, will be if I have them, hey, your knees popping in a bit. Let's try and feet out a little bit or angle your toes out a little. What you'll see is, okay, my toes angled out. But again, obviously, that is the exact same as that. I'm just turning this out and I'm still letting this pop in. And typically, that's just glute inactivity. You can do nice little glute activation exercises to get those fired up for you. So just again, trying to keep things hip width apart. Nice straight line here. Boom. 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 Nice straight line for the whole time. Versus, again, and this is extremely common to see. People will kind of go in like this. This is where you see most people literally doing a lunge where that's not straight. My hips aren't straight. They're way too close, so balance is off quite a bit. Where your balance is going to be a lot better if you go a little wider. You should just have better center at the bottom there. Good. Any other exercises you're trying? Okay. Cool. Again, if you guys have any other questions at any point, ask any of us. In terms of the Facebook Live, people are going to post this video too. And if anybody has any questions, you can comment on it or ask any of us. We're nice people. That's it. Right. Thank you. Thanks, Kat, for videoing. Much appreciated. Good to go. No problem. That helps again.